Thank you, Chrissy. Thanks very much. You gave us a nice range of sites, and you showcased a lot of different issues and priorities and practices that we all need to consider. I'm glad you touched on the need to describe or inventory vegetation and landscape features, which came up in a couple of your sites. Does anybody have any questions for Chrissy? I would say just ask. Just use your phone, and we'll just do it that way. Well, I'll throw out one, Chrissy, to get things going. I'm curious about the Peterson Rock Art Garden. What criteria was that listed under?
It was listed under criterion C for its method of construction, and then I believe it was also listed under criterion A for its role as an early roadside tourist attraction in Central Oregon.
Okay, that's interesting. And as we all know, sometimes when we're dealing with a significant landscape, the word landscape doesn't necessarily appear in the areas of significance or may not be evident, but, a landscape, when you're nominating it, you kind of know it. I'm going to go on with questions, but anyone needs to butt in at any time, please. On the Shirk Ranch, you mentioned that it was also nominated for archaeology. Now, was that historic or prehistoric?
It was historic, and it was it was that fuzzy middle ground between when is this building, this collapsed piece, eligible under only criterion D, and essentially, there was a grave site as well, but it was mostly that there were some collapsed features that really were not, there was not enough integrity to tell the story under A, under, I can't remember if that was A only or in C. So there was, and that was recommended to us by the National Register staff there years ago to do it that way, and it made sense. But that's always a fuzzy line too. When does a building become an archaeological feature as opposed to a historic one?
That's right, yeah.
Are you talking about the Shirk Ranch or the P Ranch?
The Shirk Ranch.
Okay, I didn't catch the collapsed part of that.
Well, yeah, there wasn't, I didn't show a picture of it. That ranch is pretty far flung, and the pictures, the color ones I could find really only focus on those really iconic-looking abandoned house features, but there are quite a lot of other features there, and a water tower that literally collapsed during the process of the nomination being written.
I have another question, and that is are the landscape features pretty well described in that?
No, there isn't much to speak about. The setting is well described, but it is so, once you sort of give a lay of the land, there's not much more to say about that. They didn't really manipulate the landscape that much beyond building on it. It's so
there weren't fences, there's no circulation system?
There's no real circulation system. There were fences and corrals, and those were talked about for sure. Hard to date, but those were definitely talked about. But they didn't do much beyond that out there. So remote.
Anybody else? Well,
Chrissy, I wanted to know what the acreage was for this ranch and also for some of these other large agricultural properties.
That's a good question that I don't have the answer to right away. I can get you that information, though. I just don't have it off the top of my head. I could guess, but that wouldn't be very helpful for you.
Ballpark figure.
Ballpark?
And maybe address the relationship of what been nominated in these cases to what the typical ranch or farm would have been in that part of Oregon, if you know?
Yeah, well, that actually brings up a good point that a lot of these ranches were, this is a BLM-owned ranch, so it's probably pretty big. It's acreage-wise. I'm going to see if I can find out while we're talking. But we had, of course, the donation land claim that a lot of these ranches, especially in the Willamette Valley, a lot of these landscapes started out at 600-plus acres and then got whittled down over time, 320, 160, and now you've got 4, say. That's particularly true on the west side of Oregon, where the population is much higher. So, do you when you look at a property and you think, wow, this originally had 160 acres and now we've got 4, is that diminishment of integrity important enough to the story to call it ineligible? So that's an issue on the west side. Out on the east side, they too have been sort of shrunk. The P Ranch that I showed is one of 3 of Pete French ranches that is on the Malheur National Wildlife Reserve. He owns several of them, and in addition to a very famous round barn that's also out there. So those are, the refuge has really sort of absorbed a lot of that original acreage. Those were thousands and thousands of acres, each one of those ranches. So, you don't see that kind of acreage being included in the boundaries of these properties.
Thanks very much.
Excuse me, this is Jill Cowley. I just have a comment to add. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. The remaining acreage for ranch properties is an issue. There is an example, actually in Arizona, of a nomination done for a very extensive ranch property that included a lot of the original acreage. If folks are interested, I can find out, and provide a reference to that.
Arizona Strip, which includes a lot of water rights areas as well.
Did you hear that question, Jill?
No.
Okay, Linda McClellan is going to repeat it.
I wondered if the one you're thinking about is in the Arizona Strip region.
Yeah, that's the one.
And it includes not only area where the ranching was, but a lot of research was done on the water rights and the assignment of those rights. So you almost have a checkerboard in some areas.
Yeah.
And this is one that was determined eligible, I think, through the consensus process with the state.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a hard sell in Oregon.
Well, I think it was not without a struggle in Arizona.
Yeah, I'm sure.
The research was so convincing because here was an actual federal record that said this ranch had these water rights in this particular region. And there were a number of feature areas outlying places where there were water tanks and things like that. Where there actually were features on the land. And I wonder, if we knew more about the ranching, say in Lake County, if we wouldn't find some comparable types of resources that were outlying the main complex.
Oh, I'm certain that they're out there. We sort of have to take what we can get out there in terms of listable properties or private properties owners who are willing to list their properties out here. So we feel like it's a lot to ask to expect that those discontiguous pieces or far-flung acreage be included if all we get is the farmstead then we're going to make a case for that. But just because some of these are just so huge.
Right. All right. Well, thanks. And I think we'll go back to that point a little bit with this Pennsylvania presentation. So just one thing I want to mention is I was glad on two of your design spaces, on Laurelhurst Park and also at the Halprin site, you mentioned this, the approach of describing rooms. So that is a very effective tool that can be used with design spaces, and there's sort of a corollary with rural spaces, but we wouldn't necessarily call them rooms. But I think it's an approach to compartmentalizing the landscape or making a huge landscape sort of comprehensible and describable at a level we can understand.